All right. Thank you all for joining us this morning for our second day of our second FC Build conference. Since some of you in the audience are new to FC Build, let me start with a short introduction to Foundation Capital. So Foundation was founded in 1995. We're an early stage venture firm managing $4 billion in capital, and more than 30 of our companies have gone public. We've backed some extraordinary entrepreneurs over the last 2.5 decades, and in our enterprise practice, we've been fortunate to partner with founders in enterprise infrastructure up and down the stack. So from cloud, data, AI, automation, and DevOps, as well as B2B SaaS and cybersecurity. Primarily leading seeds and Series A's, we usually work with companies before they have any revenue or even a product in some cases. So we're basically backing extraordinary dreamers with extraordinary dreams and working with them to make it real. Speaking of extraordinary dreamers, please allow me to introduce you to our two speakers, Johnny Buffaret and Chris Lockhead. So by way of background, Johnny is a founder and CEO of Hopin, a software platform that needs no introduction because you all are using it right now. Johnny started Hopin in January of 2019 with the goal of making the world feel closer. Prior to Hopin, Johnny was a student at the University of Manchester, which basically means he's younger than nearly everyone here. Christopher Lockhead is an entrepreneur, category designer, startup advisor, now author, newsletter creator, and podcaster. Prior to co-creating Category Pirates and writing Play Bigger, Chris was a 3-time Silicon Valley public company CMO at Mercury, which was acquired by HP back in, I think, the early 2000s for $4.5 billion. That's when this was a lot of money. He also was a CMO at Scient and Vantiv. And as I think you'll see in a minute, Chris is a font of non-obvious, often indelicate insight with respect to all things related to category creation and marketing. So with that behind us, I want to start this morning's discussion with a framing question for you, Chris. And there's a premise basically embedded, I think, in just about every entrepreneur's mind, and that is, how does my product or technology stack up against every other competitive product in the market? And I'd love for you to just kind of tell folks, what's wrong with this as against view of the world, and what does it actually look like to create a new category instead?
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. It's a real pleasure to be here. So you said premise, and so I'll start there. Legendary entrepreneurs and legendary category designers reject the premise because ultimately context is everything. And thinking about thinking is the most important kind of thinking. And so what happens in most startup situations, entrepreneurial situations, and certainly marketing situations is there is a undiscussed, unacknowledged, unthought through decision that gets made completely unconsciously. And the decision goes like this. What we're doing here is we are competing in an existing market category against incumbent players, and how we're going to win is with a better product. And once the world sees how much better, faster, cheaper, bigger, smaller our carbidingulator is, they'll beat a path to our door because we all know the best carbidingulator wins. And the problem with that, even though it's been perpetuated virtually by every business school in history and the vast majority of management and strategy and marketing books, is it's 100% wrong. None of the legends did that. The legendary people and companies that we respect and admire the most are the ones that broke and took new ground. They're the ones that stood out. They're the ones that moved the world from an old way to a new way and fundamentally designed a new category of living, playing, or working. And so the most legendary entrepreneurs in the world are category designers, and they don't accept the premise. As a matter of fact, they are there to change it. The aha here is that everything is the way that it is because somebody changed the way that it was. And legendary category designers are those people.
Awesome. Awesome. So Johnny, I want to weave you in because you're creating an entirely new category around this concept of virtual and hybrid events, kind of like FC Build. And you started the company 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago while trapped in your London flat, which is where I think you are now. But at that time, you were recovering from an autoimmune disease. And then you went in last year kind of from a couple dozen customers to, I don't know where you are today, 200,000, more than that. But I'd love to understand kind of as you were thinking about and building the kind of earliest versions of Hopin, it was out of this struggle, but were you also thinking like, no, like this whole category of virtual or hybrid events is something that needs to exist, and I'm going to build it from scratch?
There's so much to unpack there. First, I moved from London to Berlin, so I'm in a hotel at the moment. But I'll say, I'm traveling, so I'm in Berlin at the moment. On the second, we are 200, over 200,000. It was about 2 years ago. We had so starting off autoimmune disease. That's true. I suffered from an autoimmune disease that kept me stuck at home. I wasn't unable to work or do anything essentially for quite a while. It was in my recovery that I started to realize the value, because I just moved to London. I didn't know anyone, and I was attending events like basically developer conferences to get a job, to be able to network with people. And I noticed that, a little bit politically incorrect, if I was reaching out to someone on LinkedIn and they were aware that I was in London and not somewhere of lower wage engineering, cost, they would give me the wage that I deserve and, pass. It was super weird.
Oh, it's all good. I think we know Chris is rated R. You can be as rated R as you want to be.
Yeah, so it's super weird. So I started to attend these events in person, and that's how I would get my consulting gigs as I was recovering from my illness. In the meantime, I was like, I was trying to attend online events or virtual events, and the experience was shite. I mean, you had, it was essentially just a live stream. And I thought in my head, let's try and build something that I'm here to network and to live stream. It's kind of like why you watch things live in the moment, especially like on YouTube. I mean, the comments are some of the best parts, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wanted something way more engaging, even if it was just watching content. Let me see what people think, how they interact, et cetera, et cetera. And then the same thing. I mean, when it comes to networking, some events need networking. How do you allow people to network? So built the platform as a POC, aware that the virtual event space was a bad space. Investors, actually, when I first started giving this to investors, they were like, because I think what you said before the call, Steve, they were like, virtual events? Are you kidding me? Or I mean, it was more like, event management is not a great time. That was a reaction.
Yes.
That was the look. So for my bet was that we could recreate and virtual events, and it's going to get better and better, and maybe in 10 years it's all in the metaverse. But the whole point is that there's a better experience of not having to be in person and attending an event virtually. I mean, there's a lot of value in not having to travel for these events, but at the same time getting all the same experience, networking and content. Now, we're not exactly there, especially on the experience part. I don't know if you've attended a virtual concert. Sorry to say, even here, they're not as good as the real thing, in my opinion, Steve. I'm not sure.
Yes, I agree.
But for the content learning, some of the base networking, less experiential, is just as good. And I'll just say, from a Hopin perspective, our goal now is really, I feel like over the last 2 years, we went from that 200,000 organizers to over 200,000 organizers and lots of users. And I think there's a bigger space actually to start connecting. I don't think we'd be using Google today had Google not had Google Search, Google Images, and Google Docs, and all these, not Google Docs, Google videos, like everything that's attached to this ecosystem that keeps us addicted to their products, because they're so much more valuable. And I see the same thing with Hopin. We have events. We're in our studio now, which is a high, allows you to create the production. But we're also going into post video recording. So what do you do with the recordings at the end of this video? How do you touch them up? And so we want to build an ecosystem there, and that's been something that I've been very excited about.
And did you, at the very beginning, and I'd love to get kind of Chris's read on this too, did you find yourself doing this sort of, we're kind of like, this isn't Hopin, but like we're the Uber for construction equipment. In other words, where you find that maybe because investors aren't as curious or just haven't taken the time, that you kind of end up using these comparative or analogous sort of descriptions of your business that then don't really authentically capture what you're trying to build.
No, what's funny, I was speaking with one of my earlier investors this year, Andres Klinger. He has an interesting VC. It was 2 years ago he invested. And all of his friends said no to hopping. Every single one, all of his investor friends, they were like, this business. Actually, what they said, he said today to me, he was saying that all of them said, the founder sucks, but the business product looks pretty good. And it was because I pitch very. I've been in Europe my whole life. I haven't been in the US for very long. I spent maximum 6. I wasn't great at pitching, and I think I never did the we're Uber for X because I just thought like no we're like a virtual event but with chat and network and it creates more value, and trying to sell that was very difficult in the early stages. So until we started getting genuine traction, our valuation sucked.
Amazing. All right. So Chris, I want to weave in a concept that you taught me a few years ago. And as I was saying before we hopped on live, I sort of feel like you said it in passing, but it was profound when I heard it. And it was this concept of forcing your users to make a choice, not a comparison. And I'd love for you to just talk through what you mean by this. And when it's done right, how does it play out in a startup's marketing as well as even in its product?
Thanks, Steve. Sure. So here's the aha. The more comparable you are, the more replaceable you are. And so we think it's insane that companies do comparison marketing. You see it all the time. You go to some company's website and they'll even have some kind of a chart where they'll have their feature set compared to their competitor's feature set, and they'll have 16 checks and the other bad guys will have 3 checks, and this kind of stupidity. And so the more comparable we are, the more undifferentiated we are. And so we want to be known for a category that we own. And so anybody who spends marketing dollars on comparison or even trying to capture existing demand is lighting their future on fire. Legendary category designers force a choice, not a comparison. Because when we force a choice, we're not comparable. By definition, we're declaring our uniqueness. And the more unique we are, the more differentiated we are. And most importantly, Steve, the more we're viewed as being uniquely qualified to solve a highly strategic problem, the more valuable we are. And we're on now the road to becoming the category leader. And as we discovered in our primary research, in category after category after category in the tech industry, one company earns 76% of the total value created in the category as measured by valuations and market caps. And so we don't want to be comparable to anyone else. We want to be the one company that wins, and that's by being radically differentiated. And so if that's your objective, playing a comparison game is insane. And so you want to force people to have a fork in the road. It's either us or this whole other thing, but don't compare us to a bunch of, it's a whole other category. So that's a category to category thing, not a product to product comparison.
What a great way to describe it. And my sense is that that's kind of scary for early stage founders, because the choice concept sort of says, well, am I closing a door? Am I, somehow shrinking my TAM? There's lots of sort of siren songs to kind of keep more degrees of freedom, the longer you are, or the sort of as you're building your kind of product out and trying to sort of get that kind of first hack to work. And it's the courage to sort of see, like I'm actually building something else. Henry, by the way, at Carta talks about this concept of one of N markets versus N of one markets. And of course, Carta wants to be an N of one market. In other words, be the only player in a market that they create, not unlike what you're describing here.
And not to interrupt you, but I will anyway. Carta is doing a legendary job at category design.
Yeah. So
I mean, who even knows who the number 2 is in that space?
Exactly.
And if they do know, why do they care? They don't. They're doing a legendary job. Hats off to them.
All right, so let's turn this on Johnny, which is, so Johnny, what choice are you asking of your customers? And what is the sort of better alternative future state you're trying to get them to see and then ultimately believe in?
Well, the choice we're trying to make, and I don't think we're doing as good a job as Carta. I think I completely agree that Henry.
We have Chris here to help you. This is like we can do it right here on the fly.
If you want to do a live therapy session, just jump on the couch and I'll open some whiskey for all of us and we'll get right to it if you want. Seriously.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Yes. All right. Go ahead, Johnny. What's the choice?
So we're making them choose between good product. See, I'm underselling you. We're making them between high engagement and non-high engagement. The hard thing about virtual events are, so let me rewind that slightly. I could give you, I always try and tell this to people, I could give you an RFP for, you could say, hey, I want to increase communication in our company. And I could either give you, and you're like, and you don't have any software. Let's just say you don't have any software and you're like, I want people to be able to communicate with each other, right? In our company. And I could either give you email or I could give you Slack. Both of them will tick your RFP checkpoints. And so one of the things that we're trying to do as a company is really push away and say, how much do you care about engagement? Anybody can put a live stream up. You could stream an event to YouTube Live and just let it live there. How much do you care about the data? How much do you care about the engagement? How much do you care about the whole story around the product? And that's really where that's the decisions we want to make. Like, Zoom is a subpar events product compared, in our view, and it's not engaging, et cetera. Again, being a little bit controversial, but our position is if you want a highly engaging, so it's the choice of highly engaging or non-highly engaging, and then it's about connecting the dots. I mean, you see it, Dreamforce, is a big event that's hosted every single year. It's very hard to see the ROI and the engagement that people bring, and that's why marketers spend so much on events. And sometimes it's one of the first budgets that's cut is the events budget in a company because it's hard to bring ROI. Virtual events have brought that ROI. Higher engagement brings higher retention, brings more pipeline. If you're talking about a SaaS company, and higher conversion on your pipeline, it's about getting this message across. So we're really trying to change the whole message about what events mean to a company, how valuable they can be as a signal for retention, a signal for revenue, conversion. It's not a simple thing to pitch, right?
And do you think about it because again we live in this sort of magic quadrant world as Chris sort of started out saying, where like everyone wants to put you in a box. Have you contemplated, like, is there a new category? Is it virtual events, or have you guys played around with, no, like there's something else here and we just need to define it. And by definition, by defining it and own it.
Yeah, well, we're doing full year planning for next year this year. And we're going to be doing a very big marketing change about how we discuss events. I believe that this is just one shared experience of multiple shared experiences that you can have, whether it's a customer, there's a million ways that you touch the customer or touch your target audience, whether that's a live recording video. I'd give Loom an example of that. Loom is a shared experience, for example, all the way across when you get to events and virtual events, which are much bigger size. But the whole point is these are all touch points of shared experiences. We think we are a shared experience platform. And what's at the core of this is the data that you're collecting across the customer, across all these shared experience that makes it unbelievably valuable. So for us next year, we don't think virtual events are in a box world. And we already have multiple products lined up for next year. And I think they totally align. Like there's, you can see it with products like, what's that product? Fucking amazing company. Gong. Have you seen Gong?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gong's an amazing company. They're the ones, that's a shared experience. A meeting is a shared experience, but they're taking it out, taking the data behind it and showing you the true value of what that meeting is worth, right? And how much value, and how different one shared experience versus another can mean. And so again, that's what we're pushing for, that, for virtual events and all these other shared experience, which show the data and the ROI.
So Chris, if you're, if Johnny's going to sit down on your well-worn couch as a therapist for, category creation, this concept of shared experiences, how would you coach him? What would be some of the ways, even on the fly, because this is what makes these things fun, to sort of think about as ways of forcing that choice, as we were talking earlier, as opposed to the comparison?
Great question. And I think we're about ready to have some fun, I hope. So first of all, Johnny, hats off. I mean, legendary job. You said from 2,000 to 200,000?
No, from dozen. Like he started last year with like a dozen customers to 200,000.
2.5 years ago. I mean, I want to 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years ago we started.
Okay, well, he's your VC. He's going to talk you up a little bit.
I'm not his VC, but he's the fastest growing enterprise product in history, right? Like this is nuts.
So you're doing a great job, clearly. Here are the first things that come to mind. What we need is a clear point of view. Engagement's not it. And so there's this concept in category design called frame it, name it, and claim it. So first you got to frame the problem. And so when you began to speak about engagement, you did no framing. You just said lack of engagement sucks or whatever. But that's sort of a bit of a no shit Sherlock. And I don't think you're about engagement. I could be 100% wrong. We're just having this conversation in real time. So here's what I think might be the path. So frame it. Number one, we're at a point right now in the United States, we can get the data for Europe and elsewhere, where there's roughly 138 million native analogs in the US, Gen X and boomers. And in the United States, there's roughly 140 million native digitals, millennials, and Gen Z. Native digitals, as you know, are 180% or 80 degree different than native analogs. Native analogs are the last breed of native analogs, and this is the first breed of native digitals we've ever had, in that they came of age deeply integrated with the cloud, mobile technology, gaming, et cetera, et cetera. So what does that mean? If you're native digital, your primary experience of life is digital, and your analog experience of life is an adjunct to your digital one. If you're a native analog, of course, that's completely the opposite. So the big aha here is the native digitals have taken over already. And just to put a fine point on it, a few months ago, the Wall Street Journal wrote a story about how, they didn't call them these, of course, but how native analogs have a completely different mindset around inheritance. That is to say, they're giving the native digitals money before they die. And so the Wall Street Journal called it the largest wealth transfer in the history of the world. So point number one, and this is all about Hopin, is the native digitals have already taken over. There's a 60% chance you're working for a millennial if you work in corporate America. That's point A. Point B, when any new technology emerges, we take the old thing and use the new thing with it. So for example, when the movie camera was invented, what did human beings do? They took the movie camera, they stuck it in a theater, and they videotaped the play.
And they were the worst movies of all time.
Absolutely sucked. And then one day, some entrepreneur, some category designer cracked open a bottle of whiskey and a bag of Mary Jane and thought, what if rather than taping the play, we purpose-built the story creation to take advantage of the new platform? And ta-da, movies were born, and ultimately the rest of it. So what does all of this have to do with Hopin? Today in the event space, native analogs, because they're the ones who run most companies, are videotaping the play. And the future of events are shared experiences that are native digital. And we, Hopin, are the world's first native digital shared experience platform, purpose-built for creating an experience, a group experience, a shared experience where when you participate in it, you're fired up in a way that you never could be in a native analog experience. And the choice you force is exactly that. We are the native digital shared experience. We're not the hybrid event, all that other stupidity that people are thinking about. So anyway, I'll stop there and get your reaction.
Well, in my sense too, Johnny, is that this is kind of what you're building, but like, yeah, and the market is pulling you there, but I'd love to hear kind of how you think about it.
I completely agree. And I think you've you can tell that you're a great marketer. I bought into that more than anything. I'm really bought into that. I mean, it makes total sense. I think, I think from a marketing standpoint, it totally makes sense. It's really difficult for us. I mean, again, sharing transparently, you're selling to two people at Hopin. I mean, we want to sell to one person and we're selling to another, i.e., today we're probably selling to the event planner in most cases. And I think for that push, as you just mentioned, I think for that push, as Chris said, I think the event planner should hear that native digital, beautiful experience. That's the story that that I'm feeling, multiplayer, et cetera, et cetera. It's when we're trying to bring the conversation up to the CMO or to someone who owns the budget or the revenue marketing, and they're saying, yeah, this is great, and shared experience are great. What is the value that we're getting from having a multiplayer shared experience digital? And I think that's where my previous point was. I'm trying to tie shared experiences to engagement, higher engagement. What does that actually mean for you if it's a better experience versus just a video? Well, it means more people are engaging. There's more intent signals on the customers that you invited to this event. And that data could then be used to touch your ROIs or your goals.
So this is a really important point. And so I think, Chris, if I put the ideas together, this is kind of from the cheap seats, but I think your point was, look, we've got to frame this, and the framing around digital natives versus analog natives, and the sort of, the fact like we're beginning this new chapter, I think is helpful. I think, Johnny, what you're saying as well is, look, the people who buy this need to have a reason and need to connect the expense to some improvement in engagement, and then therefore dollar denominate the value that's created for the company. And all the stuff you're doing around sort of downstream analytics, and you would literally never know anyone who's watching your YouTube video. You'd never have any sense of where they really sort of got more interested rather than less. So you're bringing all those sort of business functions as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the clearest point. I think like how Chris mentioned it, that is the core of what we want to tell the outside world.
So Johnny, if I could, we're right on it. When I do a legacy analog event, here's what I don't have: a data flywheel. I don't know who went. I don't know what they did. I don't know how long they stayed. So what the engagement buys me is a data flywheel. And we have gotten to a place in our thinking where we believe that today, whether you're a one gal shop or whether you're the largest corporation on the planet, you cannot be successful, and you sure as shit can't dominate a category that you're creating without a data flywheel, because insight to your super consumers, that is to say the 30 to 5% of your customers that drive the vast majority of not just your revenue and profits, but your super consumers are also the ones who do the talking that build the category, so that it's not their value extends beyond their own economics. So my point is, if you don't have a data flywheel of your super consumers today, you have no pathway to success in a native digital world. And so what the engagement gets me is that I now have a risk, because I assume that, if it's a user conference, customer conference, something along those lines, right? Who shows up at my customer conference? My super consumers.
Yeah.
What they attend, what new products they're interested in, whatever the fuck it is they're doing is a legendary data science insight to where they think the category is going, right? And so it is you could argue that it's a seminal piece of building a data flywheel around the super consumers that drive the future of not just the business, but also the category. And so I'll say one more thing. And so what there might be to do is that becomes a critical part of the POV. And I say this like an idea, maybe after this discussion, get to work on a legendary white paper called The Economics of SX.
The Economics of SX. What is SX?
Shared experience.
Oh, right. Yeah. I should have guessed that one. I think that's absolutely brilliant, Chris. Genuinely. I think we should pay you advisory for this one. because I think no, genuinely, I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I think from sometimes when I think about this, I mean, you brought it up just now about super consumers. We call them highly engaged community members, and so we talk about your customer, and then we talk about the community layer on top. It's sometimes not even a customer; they're just advocating. Oh, I love Notion. Notion's amazing. Figma, wow, best design. Even though you're not a Figma user or a designer yourself, you love Figma. Same thing with Tesla and and those those intent signals. Like, I would love to call ourselves the intent signal company, or
Yes. Particularly for supers, right? And you're on another interesting one. So where this concept of super consumers comes from is my partner Eddie Yoon in Category Pirates, and he wrote a book about it, and we wrote a Category Pirates mini book about it. He also had this additional insight based on data, which is a super of one is a super of nine. That is to say, if you're a super consumer, and most of us are of something, then you're a super consumer of 9 other categories. And so that opens the aperture to what are the logical adjacencies, right? So if I'm a super consumer of shared experiences, native digital shared experiences, it probably means I'm on the vanguard of marketing. And so there's probably other things that I'm doing in the content marketing space, in other areas of marketing. And so you could probably even find out who your supers are and what are the other 9 categories that they are supers of. And that could present a roadmap for partnerships, building an ecosystem, and influencing your category blueprint as well as your product roadmap. Because once you know who your supers are, if you can find out what are the other 9 categories, bam, you have a set of insights in your data flywheel that make you almost untouchable.
So this is awesome. And one of the things that's running through my head is, you are, Johnny, sort of just this, case study of the fastest path to this, just absolute breathtaking growth, as we were talking about at the very beginning. But I also feel like what would be helpful for some of the folks in our audience is to kind of almost roll the clock back by a year. Or maybe even a year and a half, and help folks, both of you, I think, kind of walk through what are the ways, the tools, and specifically the practical, tactical tools to kind of help think about category design and how you thought about it, Johnny, from the early days. Because I think obviously you have success now, and you get the you now have sort of earned the right to go kind of describe what you do perhaps differently, create a new category. But what's the process by which a young company, even zero in revenue, says, you know what, if my goal is to be an 80% market share winner of this category of my own creating, how do I do that? So I'd love for you both to kind of weigh in on how this might impact the really young companies in our audience.
I want to hear Johnny's opinion first. I know my own opinion.
Well, I have so many questions for you, Chris. Now, so I'm going to leave them. But I just, from my perspective, the shitty answer would be raise more money than other players and make a bigger splash in terms of media, make sure people are talking about you. But the real answer is community advocacy. And what I mean by that is, I think the best companies that end up leading the space, I mean, Carta has that. It's not just about the money they've raised. It's about setting the flag, being the first ones to set the, to kind of create the space or talk about the space in a new way, talk about the values of it, again, coming back to it, that's the company we're trying to build. We're trying to build a company that's talking about community advocacy. Everything outside your, I attended a Notion event. I barely use Notion, but it's just because, I want to be part of that community and an advocate for them. And so I think.
By the way, what about Notion? And because this is such a good non-Hopin example, what about Notion? What did they do right? What category did they create, or how did they sort of frame this in a way, or Figma, because you brought them up as well, where you're a fanboy, but you don't even use the product?
Yeah, I think for me, again, I'm just a big. I enjoy looking at these community-led companies. Look at StreamYard's a clear example. This company that we acquired, and it's part of the Hopin Suite, it's our Hopin Studio that we're in right now. They had the founders were doing every single week. We're doing a YouTube update to just any consumers, anyone who's watching. Like literally every single week, every Sunday at 3 p.m., they would take questions. People would ask for the same features week on week. Sometimes there were features that you wouldn't want to add, but just like hearing them out, putting them up on screen, etc. They have a Facebook group that had 10,000 people and was growing super fast, where anytime anyone brought up a competitor on any other platform, it's shut down by one of their really excited advocates, if that makes sense, saying like, no, this is the best product, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, it was the same with Notion. I used Notion for only a little bit. And, I felt like cool. I was like, no, I'm not going to use Google Docs. Notion's great. I was part of the Notion Facebook. I got really, that's 4 years ago. And you kind of appreciate, it's almost like Elon Musk. I don't know what it is. Something about the rebellious nature of building a company in a space that already exists with like high quality product. Figma gives you that other feeling. Maybe I'm a fanboy because I love really high quality UX. I really love a high quality product. And for me, Figma's the definition of that. And you can see how big their community is. You can see how much advocacy that company has. It's unbelievable. Nobody's going to beat Figma in design. I think they're going to own the whole market, for until they become big, corporate, and ugly, as they say. But that advocacy is there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure Chris has a lot better thoughts on this.
So first of all, unbelievable job, and buying StreamYard, fucking genius. And just as a side note on that, at a high level, there's really only two kinds of acquisitions. There's acquisitions for consolidation, and those generally happen in slow to no growth categories where there's a race to the bottom and they're just trying to get quote unquote economies of scale. Translation, they're going to fire everybody in accounting and they're only going to have one accounting and one HR department. And that's the vast majority of acquisitions. Category designers don't do those acquisitions. Category designers do acceleration M&A. Categories that accelerate the growth or acquisitions that accelerate the growth of the category. And what the growth of the category means is adding category potential. My friend Steve Vassallo once said, we look for $0 billion markets, right? And so a $0 billion market is one that obviously doesn't exist, but has massive potential. When you buy StreamYard and put it together with your core products at the time, the combination of which it becomes a category redefining event. And as a result, it actually expands the category potential, which in time turns into a verifiable TAM. So great job.
Can you bring that to my board, please? They don't think it's that.
Yeah, well, I don't know who's on your board, but I can explain it to them if they don't understand it. And by the way, if they don't understand it, with all seriousness, they need to not be on your board.
I'm kidding, by the way. I hope they're not watching.
Okay, so to get to this community thing, which is incredibly powerful, here's sort of the hierarchy. You design the category. And you design the category by identifying a problem that we know we have, but in a unique and different way, or problem we never even knew that we had. That problem opens the world up to thinking about things in I'm going to use this word on purpose, different way. You craft a point of view that explains the problem and therefore why the solution matters. And that's what we were sort of jamming on before, the frame it, name it, and claim it. Now, here's why the POV matters. Word of mouth marketing was, is, and always will be the greatest form of marketing. And when people talk about, well, we want to do some marketing that makes us go viral on the internet. Viral on the internet is word of mouth marketing, just digitally, right? So the question is, how do you create a legendary new category cost effectively? Well, you craft that point of view, and then you make sure that the right words, i.e. the point of view, go in the right mouths. Because if you don't tell them what story to tell, that's going to be freeform jazz. If you tell them what story to tell, guess what happens? All your supers sing the same song. And that's how you get the category to scale. So my point is, category POV, educate the supers on the POV, and create a community with those supers and let it fly.
Just awesome.
That's
And one question that came up, I think, Elliot, which I just want to make sure I hit it because I think it's embedded in the second point you just made, Chris, which is this the importance of naming. And when you sort of really do this right, it gets almost biblical, right? Like to name it is to own it. And what do you advise startups when they're kind of, again, early, maybe they're even pre-funding and they have not yet spent the time to really think about the category name and on all the investment around that?
So if you start paying attention and you start using what we call the category lens, category design is a new lens on business. One of the things you start to notice when you start to really pay attention is legendary category designers are legendary at languaging. Most people are very lazy with their language. Most people accept the premise. Legends don't accept the premise, and they purposely create new languaging to differentiate. And the specific thing they're doing with new languaging is they're moving the world from the way it is to a different way.
So I want to use a specific example because I think there's the best one I can think of, and apologies because it's a little old, but it's so good that I think it transcends time, is when Jobs came back to Apple in 1997, the marketing budgets were literally by BU. So you had a different marketing budget depending upon what product you were selling. And he basically wiped all that shit out and said, we're going to do one thing. And this was, of course, the origin of the Think Different marketing campaign, which was, in my opinion, probably the most brilliant commercial that has ever been made. Still gives me goosebumps when I watch it. And I think the thing that, this sort of point around consolidation and also being clear, because I think the temptation for many startups is to have like 5 different names they want to have. Like, in other words, they name a new category, the product has a different name, the company has a name that's maybe not the same as the product. But like, my advice to founders is pick one name, right? Like you get to define and own one new thing. But if you do 5 new things, then everyone gets confused again. And so kind of putting all of your wood behind that one arrow is also important. So don't go crazy with it. Be disciplined, and then just really, everything sort of goes behind that one big idea. I'm curious how that sits with both of you.
Johnny?
Yeah. I mean, I want to let you start this time.
You want me to start this time? Is that what you said? Yeah, absolutely. And what you're doing is you're comparing and contrasting, but not at the product level, at the category level. So, for example, 2 buddies of mine were senior guys at WhatsApp, and they left. They made $1 bazillion, and and then they woke up and they said, "Hey, we don't like what's going on here at all. Matter of fact, we think it's pretty fucking shitty what's happening with social media, and specifically with Facebook. We don't like it. We think it's bad for humanity, and we're kind of pissed off. And most importantly, we want something different for ourselves and our family and our friends." So they launch a company called HalloApp. And the whole presentation of the company is a point of view. And it just starts with a whole bunch of no's.
Oh, I love this.
No algorithms, no echo chambers, no influencers, no filters, right? And the category name is real relationship app, a real relationship network, as opposed to social network. This is where your real relationships live. And the legendary category designers do this thing we call prosecute the magic triangle. They get product, company, and category right, and they're all deeply, deeply integrated into the same thing. So in the HalloApp case, the big product capability that makes it a, quote, real relationship network, as opposed to what we've come to know as a social network, is in order for you and I to connect on HalloApp, we have to have each other's phone numbers. And the thinking that Michael and Niraj had on that is, if we have each other's phone numbers, we're probably in some kind of real relationship. And so if you're on HalloApp and I'm on HalloApp, but we don't share a phone number, we're not even going to see each other.
Totally.
And so the product ties to the point of view, and the point of view is building this idea of, we want a safe, secure digital place where we are not the fucking product, where we can truly communicate and we're not being monetized. And that's HalloApp.
Well, and you just said something too, which is you forced a choice. The no forced a choice, right? Not a comparison.
Ta-da.
Ta-da, yeah. Johnny, any thoughts on this? I also want, Jason's question is so good, and I know we're almost out. Well, I guess we're out of time. I'm gonna just say we'll go 5 more minutes, and I know there's so much good stuff in the comments, but this, like, I love the Jason question, which is, oh shit, like, I'm number 2. What do I do now? How do I flip the script? Do you basically invent a new category, or do you like somehow try to kind of grind your way back to number 1? What's the advice you give to number 2 players, Chris and Johnny? How would you think about it?
I mean, the clearest example that comes up for me is Uber and Lyft. I think for a time period, I think by paying more, or just, I don't want to be, I think I have a very simplified view of it that is probably wrong. But my view is that, you need to get people talking about you more than the number 1 in whatever way possible. I.e., I think you could see that with SpaceX and the other one, the one that Jeff Bezos
exactly
right. Jeff Bezos. I started seeing, I didn't even know Amazon was doing this thing until I started seeing that it's like they had some campaign and he went up and he's like, okay, well, Elon Musk is not going up as
Blue Origin. And what's funny is Blue Origin is actually Bezos's.
Yeah, exactly. And Bezos went up in space, and then I became aware of it. And now I'm aware that there's 2 in the space. And so anytime if I was buying SaaS products and both of them are SaaS products, I can guarantee you that I would look at both just because I'm aware that there's another one there. And so I think that's how I see it from a SaaS and product point of view is, if you can make enough noise as the number 1, number 2, to always be compared, that by the time, if your product's better and over time, you'll just take over, i.e. being the newer, more innovative. But I think making noise is unbelievably important. I think we benefited it from Hopin, that we got a lot more press and we aimed for it than, and it was a lot more people talking about us than other platforms did.
Awesome. Chris, I want you to take us home. And the last thing I'm going to say before you do is that all these comments have been so much fun. And we're going to, Jason, Elliot, Jane, Jessica, Kirsten, we're going to get you guys subscriptions to Chris's Substack. So we'll do that as foundation. So thank you for your questions. Chris, land this plane on the deck of the aircraft carrier here.
So here's what I would share with you. I believe, and I've been doing this for 35 years, this is the greatest time in history to be a tech entrepreneur. No question about that. And the interesting thing is, the most legendary entrepreneurs and category designers are the ones that move the world to a new place. Everything is the way that it is because somebody changed the way that it was. And there's been a series of technology breakthroughs, particularly since we moved to the cloud and mobile. And we all know that a positive outcome of the horrible plague that we're living through is this: the receptivity to new and different has never been greater than it is right now. And one of the stupidest things we hear in business and marketing is, people don't like change, people resist change, people don't like change. That's complete bullshit. People love change. Look at how much we've all changed in the last 2 years, and some of it for the greater. And so my point is this: if you are a person who thinks you can contribute to creating a materially different future, now is your time. And new categories create new categories. Just a simple example. Look at what's going on in the Bitcoin world. Bam! Explosion of new categories. I guarantee you what Johnny's doing is going to create a cascading set of subcategories underneath what he's doing and adjacent categories around what he's doing.
Totally.
And now we have the ability to be ubiquitous. I am part of a 3-man, quote unquote, media company, and we're in 190 countries. And so my point is this: now's the greatest time in history to be a tech entrepreneur who's committed to creating a different future. And if you're that person, what I would say to you is the future needs you.
All right. That was the best ski jump ending of all time. Johnny, Chris, you guys are absolutely awesome. I really enjoyed this. We took it in some interesting places, and we didn't even hit Elon's new religion and the country he's going to take over. So we'll save that for the next time. Awesome. Thank you on behalf of everyone here at FC Build. And this will, I'm sure, reverberate for many months. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone.
Bye for now.